Imagine a world without noise, no notifications, no screens, no endless updates pulling your attention in every direction, just silence and thought. Now picture a place surrounded by sea and sun, where people gathered not to escape life, but to understand it. They weren't chasing status, or comfort, or distractions. They were chasing something deeper, truth, meaning, and the essence of being human. Thousands of years ago, in ancient Greece, a spark was lit, not of technology or conquest, but of consciousness. They asked questions no one else was asking. Who are we? Why do we suffer? What makes a life worth living? While others built empires, they built ideas, democracy, philosophy, theater, ethics. They explored not just the world, but the self. They didn't pretend to have all the answers, but they knew the value of asking better questions. The ancient Greeks had a word, eўδαιμονία. It doesn't mean happiness, not in the way we use that word now, not fleeting joy, not temporary pleasure, not the rush of a new purchase or a passing compliment. To the ancient Greeks, eўδαιμονία was something deeper, something earned. It meant living in a way that allows your soul to thrive. It was a state of human flourishing, not from what you have, but from how you live. You reached it by striving to live with excellence, not to impress others, but to grow into the best version of yourself. By acting with courage, wisdom, moderation, and justice. By being honest when it was hard, disciplined when it was easier not to be, kind when no one was watching. They believed true happiness didn't come from outside rewards, but from inner alignment, from a life lived in harmony with your values. You didn't chase eўδαιμονία, you built it slowly, intentionally. It asked more of you, but it gave more in return. And when you lived this way, there was no need to search for happiness, because you were already living it. In their world, success wasn't about status. It wasn't measured in wealth, attention, or titles. It was measured in how you lived, how you thought, how you carried yourself in the quiet moments when no one else was watching. They believed the most important battles were internal, against ego, against laziness, against fear. They taught that character isn't built in comfort. It's built in discomfort, in choosing what's right when it's hard, in staying steady when life shakes you. You didn't have to be famous. You didn't have to be rich. You had to be authentic, honest, accountable. That was the Greek ideal, because when everything outside of you changes, and it always does, your values are what remain. And if those values are strong, you don't break. You bend, you adapt, you stay rooted. To them, that was strength, that was freedom, and that was success. The ancient Greeks believed time was sacred, not something to kill, not something to waste. They didn't rush through life. They moved through it with presence. A walk wasn't just a walk. It was a chance to think, to observe, to notice what the world was quietly trying to say. A conversation wasn't something squeezed between tasks. It was an exchange of souls, a chance to be heard and to hear. They believed that slowness wasn't laziness, it was wisdom. Because when you move too fast, you miss the meaning. You stop seeing beauty, you stop asking why, you become efficient but empty. To the Greeks, a meaningful life wasn't measured by how much you did, but by how deeply you lived. And the deeper you lived, the less you needed. A simple meal, a thoughtful word, a moment of stillness at the end of the day, that was enough. Because they weren't trying to escape life. They were trying to feel it. They believed the most dangerous thing you could do was go through life without asking why. Why am I doing this? Why do I want that? Why am I running? And where am I running to? They saw how easy it was to fall into routine, to follow the crowd, to chase things simply because others were chasing them. But without reflection, they warned, You don't live your life. You live someone else's. So they taught the importance of pausing, of examining your thoughts, of holding your desires up to the light and asking if they're truly your own. They believed your inner world shaped your outer one, that if your mind was chaotic, your life would be too. So clarity wasn't a luxury, it was a responsibility. They didn't fear being wrong. They feared never thinking for themselves, because in a world that constantly pulls you in every direction, the most radical thing you can do is be still and think. The ancient Greeks saw the soul as something to be trained, just like the body. You didn't become strong by accident. You became strong through daily effort, through discomfort, through repetition, and they believed the same was true of the mind. If you wanted to live wisely, you had to exercise your thoughts. You had to question your instincts. You had to learn how to sit with discomfort without being controlled by it. They practiced this through dialogue, through debate, through silence. They weren't interested in sounding smart. They were interested in becoming clear. They understood that wisdom isn't knowing everything. It's knowing what to do with what you know. And most of all, they believed the soul wasn't something you find once. It was something you return to every day, with intention, with effort, and with care. Just like the body, if you neglect it, it weakens. But if you show up for it, it grows. They believed that nothing was fully in your control except your response, not your circumstances, not your reputation, not what others think or how the world unfolds, but how you choose to meet it. That was yours. They taught that pain was inevitable, but suffering was optional. That freedom wasn't the ability to do whatever you want. It was the strength to choose what's right, even when it's the harder path. They didn't deny emotion, they just didn't worship it. They believed you could feel deeply and still act wisely, and that your ability to stay grounded, to stay calm, to stay clear in the middle of chaos was the real measure of strength. Life would challenge you, it was supposed to, but your response, that was the part you were meant to master, not just for your own peace, but for the peace you carry into the world. The ancient Greeks built more than monuments. They built ways of thinking that still shape the world today. They gave us democracy, the radical idea that power belongs to the people. They gave us philosophy, the invitation to question everything, even the things we take for granted. They studied logic, ethics, politics, poetry, medicine, not to collect knowledge, but to understand how to live. They didn't separate the mind from the soul. They believed the two were connected, that how you think shapes how you live. Even their art wasn't just decoration. It was a reflection of what they valued: balance, proportion, harmony, meaning. They didn't strive for perfection. They strived for beauty with purpose, for order in chaos, for light in the midst of uncertainty. And through it all, they left behind something bigger than architecture. They left behind a blueprint for how to live with clarity, courage, and intention. They understood how easy it is to lose yourself in the noise, in ambition, in desire, in fear. They knew how the world could pull you off course, bit by bit, choice by choice, until you're living a life that doesn't feel like your own. So they taught the power of returning to silence, to stillness, to the part of you that doesn't change when the world does. They reminded each other, you're not your status, not your image, not your failures or your achievements. You are your choices. You are your values. You are the direction your life is moving in. And if you've drifted, you can return. That was the beauty of it. The goal was never to be perfect. It was to be real, to be awake, to live on purpose, even in a world full of distraction. The ancient Greeks didn't promise that life would be easy. They never expected it to be, but they believed it could be meaningful, that it could be lived with depth, with clarity, with intention. They knew the world would change. Technology, culture, power, politics, but they believed the core of being human would stay the same, the need for truth, for purpose, for peace, and that's why their wisdom still echoes, not because it's old, but because it's timeless. Because when you strip away the noise, the distractions, the pressure, you're left with the same questions they asked. Who am I? What matters? How do I live well while I'm here? And maybe, just maybe, if you sit with those questions long enough, you don't just learn about the Greeks, you learn about yourself. I hope you enjoyed this video. If it made you pause, reflect, or breathe a little deeper, don't forget to like it, subscribe, and share it with a friend who you think might need it too. I'll talk to you on the next video.